All right, kids, here we are. Here we go. Just after 3 o'clock, 3:06 to be precise. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm not Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson is not here this week. It is Monday, April 16, 2023. This is my episode 320 for your information, entertainment, and edification on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Also on all of the various platforms. There's so many of them. I don't want to bog down the show by mentioning them all, but you can find them. We're on social media. We're on the various platforms, and we're on Talk TV. You can see my ugly mug doing my thing by going to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. We invite you to do that, and we thank those of you who do. We've got 4 hours of what I hope to be talk radio excellence. What a gorgeous afternoon. It's incredible. Mac Morey's back in the newsroom. He's gathering headlines as we speak. Actually, as we speak, he's up to shenanigans, but be that as it may. Oh, yeah, I accused you. That's fine. No.
I'm too late.
No need in coming in and helping a guy do a radio show when you're busy doing something or another. I said you were gathering headlines, and then I looked up, and you were like, you were in the middle of a big belly laugh. I know he's not. He's back there jaw-jacking with Bell K, isn't it? Is that what you're doing?
It's not. It's not.
Pamela Furr?
Yes.
Two old news hounds comparing notes about the day's activities.
That's what's happening.
What's the big story in the newsroom, Maury?
That's been, it's been pretty slow around these parts.
Sheesh, Nelly, man.
Enough to talk about.
I mean, it's I wouldn't wish some of these stories on anybody, my worst enemy, but it is for a source of information and education. It has just been an embarrassment of riches in terms of the amount of stories and where you could go on those stories. And we'll go everywhere, and we'll get to all of them throughout the course of the afternoon. So Maury's back there. He'll deliver headlines and update us on any breaking news that happens. And it is April 17th. I'm aware of that now. It is April 17th. I've been made aware thanks to our loyal following on the Super Text line. I have no idea. I do notes. If you're watching on TV, these are the notes. See? Verified. Look, Mason, you can see them, right? Yeah. I handwrite my notes because that's the way I like to do it. I'm old school that way. I've tried the computer. I've tried the note pages and the pages on the MacBook, and I don't like it. I don't like the way that it makes me feel. I don't like anything about it. I like to take a legal pad and write down the day of the week and write down the date of the calendar, and I even write down the 2023. You can see it right there.
Nice. Wow.
And I write down my episode right there.
You're a great student.
And then it helps me kind of set where we're going on the show by writing it down. And I write down any number of topics. Today we have 2 pages of topics. We have 17 different topics that we could get into today. And we'll try to get to each and every one of them. So there you go. And outside of that, it's April 17th. That's what we were saying. And I don't know why I put Monday, April 16th, but I did, and it is obviously not so. So for 8378, let me just say this to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
To you. Happy birthday, 8378. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
To you. From The Drive, the absent Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy, Mac Morey, Mason, who is controlling the experience, from all of us to you, a very special and pleasant birthday wish from us. There you have it. 615-737-9986 is our telephone number if you'd like to be a part of this show. I give those numbers often and as quickly as possible just to keep you on your toes. 615-737-9986 is also the way that you can communicate via the Super Text line, where so many of you have indicated to me that it's actually April 17th. I'm seeing them now. So I want to start where my actual show finished, because for those of you just joining, you're probably wondering, why is this dunderhead back? Well, normally I'm on from noon until 3, unless Brian is out, and I shift over to 3 to 7. And Pamela is gracious enough to take care of my time slot in my stead. That said, a lot of Republicans, I would expect much to the delight of the political Democrats who think that Donald Trump is imminently beatable, a lot of Republicans, including both of our own senators and a Republican that we'll be talking with in less than an hour, have decided to go ahead and declare their endorsement and support for the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. This seems premature. It seems odd. Maybe I'm misreading the room, but it seems like a very quick pull of the trigger on the part of these elected officials. And it's not just in the state of Tennessee. In my former state of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville's already come out in support of Donald Trump and many, many other senators around the United States of America, which would indicate it gives me the feeling that perhaps there is something that we don't know about their decision to support Donald Trump. And for the first time in quite some time, I've believed that Ron DeSantis was biding his time. Ron DeSantis was simply getting all of his ducks in a row, making sure that he had his money people in place. I mean, I think it's difficult to fathom for most of us the amount of money, time, coordination that it takes to run for president of the United States. Much like I've long said that it's a difficult task for most of us to understand how much $1 trillion is. I mean, that's a hard thing to conceptually grasp. $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. $1 billion is 1,000 million. How many of us have ever seen $1 million? Not many of us. Now conceive of 100,000 million. Yeah, I think that's right. 100,000 million. So, similarly, I think it's difficult for us to understand the amount of coordination that it takes to run a presidential campaign, and that's a lot of background. That said, Ron DeSantis he's not a dumb guy. And Ron DeSantis might be calculating right now, this is pure speculation on my part, but based on the number of individuals coming out to announce their support of the former president, the 45th president of the United States, in his attempt to take on Joe Biden or whomever he might be running against, because I still do not believe that it will be Joe Biden. I do not believe Joe Biden's running for president. I do not believe that he is physically able to do so. As much as he might want to run for president, my goodness gracious, his entire presidency has been a gift from the Chinese gods. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. I would love to hear the argument that it is not a gift from China, his presidency. Allow me to explain. Donald Trump's approval ratings were above water and getting better even in the face of every non-Fox-based mainstream media outlet in the United States of America coming after the man for 2.5 years. His political strength in both foreign and domestic policy was such. He was checking off the boxes of promises made so much that Donald Trump was going to easily win re-election prior to the COVID pandemic. Donald Trump, partially because of his own flat-footedness on the point, because we didn't know what we didn't know, and I'm not blaming him. I'm saying any president would have been flat-footed at that point based on what we were hearing from our own people. Our own people were lying to the president of the United States in the immediate aftermath of COVID. I don't have to tell you all of this, but just suffice it to say that I'm of the belief, and smart people can disagree, that without COVID, Donald Trump was going to win re-election. Hell, he almost won re-election in the midst of COVID. But what COVID gave Joe Biden the opportunity to do was to run for president from his basement. It also gave him something to run on. Hey, Donald Trump's done such a bad job at this and this and this. And why do I call it a gift from China? Because China lied about all of it from the jump, regardless of whether it was intentionally leaked or not. So flash forward to today. Does this mean that Ron DeSantis has already privately made this decision? No, I don't necessarily think that's so. But certainly there are a lot of senators that are helping him make his decision for him, at least in terms of what I'm seeing in the polling. I don't talk a lot about polling on my show. I don't talk about a lot about polling generally, because polling has become something corrupted. Polling is a news outlet or a news organization deciding that they want a headline to lead the news cycle tomorrow, so they issue a poll today so they can post the headline tomorrow. And oftentimes those polls are done in such a way where they get the outcome that the political organization conducting them wants. Oh, I'm sure that some of my purists would push back on that narrative, but I disagree. And I'm going to present to you later on the show a poll from the Tennessean that I think illustrates the point. The Tennessean is attempting to convince those of us in the state of Tennessee that we're in favor of gun control based on a poll, which is absolute garbage. I don't need a poll to tell me it's garbage. I go to the state of Tennessee all the time. You know what I'm saying? I live here. I go to these small communities. I get on the old motorbike and I drive out into the countryside. And when I find me a country store, I stop. And I have myself an RC Cola or a soda pop. And I talk to the people who are in that store. And I listen to the people who are in that store. I don't need to call people on the telephone and beg of them to engage in a survey that is handwritten for the purpose of getting the outcome that you desire in the survey, which is what most of these organized polls do. If you want to know, if you question the outcome of any poll whatsoever, just ask yourself who's conducting it, and largely that money flow will lead you to your answer that you want. So I don't talk about polls quite a bit, but you can't ignore that Donald Trump is up like 30% in most of the national polls. So it would, gosh, I mean, I don't know if you're Ron DeSantis, how you feel like you can overcome that. All right, 3:17. In a moment, we're going to talk to my coach, Scott Oatsvall of LT360. I'm excited because he's got a big event happening tonight, and if I weren't on the radio, I would be there. We'll do that next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
learning more about the 21-year-old Air National Guardsman who's responsible for leaking highly classified documents. A U.S. diplomat visits an American journalist who's detained in Russia, plus a Moral Monday rally right now in Nashville as protesters are headed to the state capitol. That and more, 3:30 right here, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
It's just another Moral Monday. Wish it was Sunday. Yeah, we'll talk about Moral Monday in just a moment. I saw the call to action on the part of some of those pastors and preachers and whatnot. We'll discuss that coming up in just a couple of minutes on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Congressman John Rose just after 4 o'clock. Everyone can stop. You know what? This is what happens when a talk radio host tries to do math. I was attempting to illustrate how much a trillion is, and even I couldn't get there. Because I said, my goodness, it's like 100,000 million. It's a million. A trillion is a million. So if you've got a million, you need a million to make a trillion. Does that make sense now? So I apologize for my incorrect math. In my defense, I actually was good at math when I was a kid. I was pretty good at it. That
really
was a
good.
Long time ago, though.
3 times 4.
3 times 4 is 12. Nice. Come on, keep going. Go. I'll do it.
7 times 3.
7 times 3 is 21. Woo!
9 times 12.
9 times 12
That's
is
a tough one.
90 is 108.
Nice. Okay, good. Solid.
Yeah, you just got to say, okay, well, maybe we can do this with Coach Scott Oatsville. Yeah. He's taught me a few, you know what, I don't know that Coach Scott has taught me a lot about math, but he's taught me a lot about health, and he joins us on the line, hopefully to convince some of you in about 3 hours from this time to get out to the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce and see Coach Scott and his team with LT360. Hey, Coach, how are you?
Matt, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to come onto your show. You are everywhere, dude. You are becoming the voice of Middle Tennessee. Congratulations. Wow. You might not be a math expert, but you are the voice of Middle Tennessee.
Well, I'll agree with everything you just said, except might not be a math expert. I'm definitely not a math expert, but I'll tell you what I'm becoming. I'm becoming an expert in my health. And I learn something each and every time I go out and visit with you guys at the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce there in Cool Springs. And I'm so excited that we've got another opportunity and still just enough time for folks to slip in, sign up, and get out there tonight, huh?
That's exactly right, Matt. And let me just invite everybody. We've got a few spots available. So don't worry about, register and anything like that. Just come on out. We've got plenty of food. It's a free dinner and discussion with me, Dr. Susanna Underwood, our whole team. You know how this works. It's a very casual, it's informative. Listen, we got 3 out of every 4 American adults over the age of 35 that it's on some disease management medication. So if you're tired of taking those pills and you're taking a handful of medications every day, let's find out what the real issue is, get to the core root of why you're unhealthy, and let's get some structure and some strategy and come out and find out about all natural health care, non-pharmaceutical countermeasures so that you can be healthy, happy, and whole and be everything that you were created to be.
Coach Scott, you've taught me so much about the pharmaceutical part of all of this, and I just want to spend a moment or two discussing that because, we obviously have been talking about a lot of tragic things that have happened in the last several weeks here in the state of Tennessee with the Covenant School shooting, of course, and that has led to a broader discussion about why this seems to be happening with more propensity. And I've got to believe, and I don't know, but I've got to believe that we need some study, research, and examination into so many of these pharmaceuticals that are going to our kids at such an early age. And you talk all the time about how there is an overprescription, really an epidemic going on in America.
Well, there's no question. And, man, I've talked about this before on my own radio show, as you know, and I'm going to be speaking at a conference this weekend in North Carolina. But, Matt, there's a pill for every ill, and there's an ill for every pill. And we've got to do a better job. We are losing this next generation of young people. Suicide's up, depression's up, anxiety's up, and all we know to do in allopathic medicine and natural and the Western medicine is to throw pills at all of these issues. We never get to the core root of why the issue is happening. We never get to real solutions and real answers. And again, pharmaceutical companies, again, are at very best it's a temporary fix and masking the real issue. So if you're looking to change that, if you're looking to get off of that, if you're looking to get healthy, get off your medications, reverse chronic illness and disease, stay out of the hospital, you have to look to natural resources and natural adjunct therapies. And that's what LT360 is all about, is finding out the real issue, what's going on, and then how do we change it with lifestyle, with nutrition, with basic body movement, emotionally, spiritually, and getting you healthy at the cellular level.
Well, it's why I always say, Coach, and I've never told you I say this, but you've never corrected me, so I feel like I'm wrong, that LT360 is life transformational, and that's what the LT stands for, right? So it's not a diet plan, but the weight becomes a residual effect of living your life to the best of your ability and to living your life to the best of your cellular health. I mean, am I saying that right, Coach?
You're absolutely right. It is about life transformation. In fact, I've had conversation after conversation with physicians and scientists. Listen, if you don't change the way you think, if you don't change how you act, if you don't change what you eat, if you don't, and by the way, these are small changes, man. You don't have to be radical and go out and eat sticks and seeds and nuts and twigs and starve yourself and live radical to get healthy. And I always tell our patients, you don't have to be healthy to get started, but you have to get started to get healthy. And that is what Life Transformation 360 is all about, is getting started, finding something that's rinsable and repeatable, and finding out what matches your lifestyle so that you can be a better and higher version of yourself.
Well, Coach, we can't wait for tonight. I wish I could be there, but I'm going to be on the radio. But I know many of our friends will be there, and we encourage everyone to come out. Williamson County Chamber of Commerce. No need to sign up. Just get out there tonight, starting at about 6:30, and you'll see Coach, Dr. Underwood, and the rest of the crew with LT360. Coach, have a great night tonight. I hope you fill the house, and I hope you help a lot of people get healthy on the cellular level.
God bless you, my friend. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. There's Coach Scott Oatsvall with LT360 joining us for a few moments talking about tonight's event at 6:30 at the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce. You type it in there, you'll see the address. It's over there in Cool Springs. It is 3:29. When we return, we will focus on the possibility of a Trump-DeSantis ticket. Do you think that that's a possibility? Plus, the numbers of Republicans coming out and saying thumbs up to Donald Trump is pretty astounding over the last several days. And then we will eventually turn our attention to state politics. And I have a question for you, and it involves the Speaker of the House. I'll ask that question coming up in a few. It's 3:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive.
3:30, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Currently 66 degrees on Music Row and a beautiful week ahead of us. Weather and traffic in just a few minutes. Jack Teixeira, the Air National Guardsman who was granted access to highly classified information, was expected to see it because of his IT position. But as Louis Martinez explains, the 21-year-old who took that highly classified information to impress a group of teenagers in a chat room broke a national trust.
He needed access to those rooms where the sensitive computers are that hold classified information. He needed access to those classified networks, and potentially that's how he could also gain access to the documents themselves. It's built on trust. The whole classification system, the whole background check system is based on trust that once you get that national security clearance, that you're going to maintain the secrecy. You actually have to sign non-disclosure agreements as well. So there's a lot of violations here.
Teixeira was charged in Boston on Friday. We're also learning a former enlisted member of the Navy, Sarah Bills, is under investigation for allegedly spreading those leaked documents on social media. Here in Nashville, a Moral Monday rally and march is taking place right now as people are marching from McKendree United Methodist Church to the state capitol. This is all to demand stricter gun laws in Nashville. Tennessee Representatives Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson will all take part in the march and rally, and Governor Bill Lee has pushed for stronger school safety plans and stricter background checks since the mass shooting at the Covenant School that happened on March 27, 3 weeks ago from today. And a U.S. diplomat is visiting an American journalist who's detained in Russia. Here's Ines de la Catera.
U.S. Ambassador to Moscow Lynn Tracy visiting Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich in prison for the first time, according to the U.S. Embassy. This is the first time U.S. diplomats have been able to see Gershkovich since his arrest on espionage charges on May 29th. The U.S. says he's being wrongfully detained. President Biden says bringing him home is a top priority.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather are on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you into higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
Double M in for BW. Matt Murphy for Brian Wilson. Today, it is The Drive, 337 on Supertalk 99.7 WTN. I'm looking at a Fox Nashville poll. Former President Donald Trump has announced he's running and now has the support of both Tennessee senators. Meanwhile, a political action committee supporting Ron DeSantis has launched ads targeting Trump. Who are you currently supporting for 2024? Let's see. I'm going to vote, and should I just vote undecided? I'll just vote undecided. I just want to see how the poll's going. So in an attempt to remain neutral, I'm going to vote undecided. Let's see, 29.8% say they're undecided. This is interesting. 41.3% claim Donald Trump is their selection. 28.9% say Ron DeSantis is their selection. That's considerably closer now, obviously, an unscientific poll by Fox 17 here in Nashville, but certainly an interesting result. I would have expected Donald Trump would be far ahead, a little bit further ahead than he currently is. So the poll is embedded in a story regarding Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn and Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty selecting Donald Trump as their presidential candidate in the upcoming election. This endorsement from Marsha Blackburn comes one day after fellow U.S. Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee also supported Trump. Hagerty tweeted on Sunday, "It's my honor to give my wholehearted endorsement to Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. I was honored to previously serve in his administration." Senator Blackburn issued her own statement this morning. By the way, we have placed calls to Senator Bill Hagerty, who told us he was very, very busy this week. I mean, that's what his office told us. And I understand he's got a lot of television interviews to conduct, so hopefully we'll have him on. Don't shake your head at me, Mason. I mean, he does. He's got Fox Business.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
He's got Fox Business to be on. He's got Neil Cavuto's show to be on. I love Senator Hagerty and love when he comes on the show. Don't get me wrong. He is probably one of the more available senators, especially to national television networks, that I've seen in some time. We would love to have him on the drive while I'm subbing in for Brian. That said, we were told that he was very busy this week. Senator Blackburn issued her own statement this morning stating, under Donald Trump, we've also asked Senator Blackburn to stop by. Our economy was booming. Gas prices were low. The inflation was under control. Our border was secure. Our adversaries feared us. Our military strong. I am proud to endorse Donald Trump for president. I can't wait until he's back in the White House. Do you believe, the question for you, do you believe these endorsements are premature? Do you believe that Ron DeSantis would be willing to subjugate himself to become a running mate for Donald Trump? Or is he too much of a type A personality? Now, I know that Ron DeSantis has previously said that that's not something that would interest him, that he's more of the executive as opposed to the subordinate. He's more of the executive type. It would certainly seem a dream ticket if you could have a Trump-DeSantis ticket. Now, some other also-rans have announced their intentions to run for president of the United States. Tim Scott over in South Carolina. I love Tim Scott. I think he's a great senator. I think he's a great voice for the people of the state of South Carolina. And I do not believe that his name ID is near where it needs to be to combat the name ID that is 99.3% Donald Trump. Now, we've got a long way to go between now and then. But one would think, I mean, believe it or not, it's April of 2023. It will be April of 2024, and everything will be all but decided before you know it. I mean, this time next year, Super Tuesday's come and gone. McMorey, do a little bit of internet sleuthing on the state of Tennessee and tell me when our primary is, because I don't know yet.
Okay.
I don't. I would bet that it's in April or May. Maybe even before. I mean, the zone is March, April, May, right? By the time we get to the convention time come August, I mean, all is said and done at that stage. So all of this will be all but decided by this time next year. And all of the candidates will be lined up by, one would expect, July or August of this year? And I don't know that we'll have a full slate like we had in 2016. where there were, 16 or 17 candidates on the stage. There were so many Republican candidates, they had to have two separate Republican debates during the primary debates because of the numbers. And slowly, one by one, Donald Trump dispatched of them all. Is that the belief amongst Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty that will happen in this case? Possibly so. No word on why they decided to do this so soon, or if, in their world, they consider it to be soon. Here's what we do know, that there was a Republican National Committee donor retreat in Nashville this weekend. The former president of the United States was very quietly in Nashville this past weekend. I cannot confirm nor deny that I was at this event. I cannot confirm or deny that I was at the Republican National Committee event. Considering that I am a low-level backbencher, considering that I am not a Republican, I seriously doubt I was at this event. But I cannot confirm or deny it. That said, there were a lot of movers and shakers at this event. It was closed to media, but according to a report from Politico, the former president claims the old Republican Party is gone and never coming back, and getting reelected would make the party an unstoppable juggernaut that will dominate American politics for generations to come. Obviously, Trump has announced his bid and said as much months ago that he would bring everyone back together in the same fashion that he did when he was elected in 2016. Obviously, there were naysayers then. Obviously, this is a different dynamic because at the time, look, in 2016, Donald Trump was not the Republican Party. He is today. He is the leader of the Republican Party. There's no question about it. He was a political outsider in 2016, so the dynamics of running as an outsider when you are the ultimate insider is a little interesting, and I'm curious how he manages to do this. But here's what I do know. He is lining up those endorsements as fast as he can get them, and I think the effort is designed to stop Ron DeSantis before Ron DeSantis gets started. To convince DeSantis, and there might be merit in this political maneuver, you convince Ron DeSantis that it is too much of a dangerous calculation to expend so much political energy just to get beat when you are young enough and vibrant enough and viable enough and you have plenty of time to mount your own campaign. And almost every Trump supporter that I've talked to, and I consider myself among your number, although I haven't made a decision about 2024. But every diehard 100% MAGA Republican that I speak with tells me the same thing. Ron DeSantis, nice enough guy, good enough guy, needs to wait his turn. That's what I hear. That's what I hear. From the super text line, Kathy writes in and says, Matt, it's not a question of whether DeSantis would be willing to take second chair to Trump. It's a question of whether either of them would be willing to put their differences aside and work together. I think there may be too much bad blood between them. I don't know, Kathy. I get that, but I think that's for DeSantis to figure out. Donald Trump has proven time and time again that he's going to – I've long said this, and I'll repeat it for you newbies in the audience, that Donald Trump, I truly believe the man has some narcissism in him, and anyone that elevates themselves to the place that he was in the business community, to the place that he was in the entertainment industry, and then in the political world, you have to have a little bit of that. I mean, all of your presidents are going to have a little bit of that. So that's not a knock. It's just an observation. But as such, I truly believe all of this nonsense about Trump's a xenophobe, Trump's a sexist, Trump's a that's the Democrat trying to use a playbook that doesn't work on Donald Trump. I believe he sees three types of people, and three types of people only. He sees individuals that he considers to be loyalist, meaning they are loyal to his agenda and to his goals. You are either useful to his agenda or to his goals, or you're an enemy. So you are a friend, useful, or a foe. One of three things. And you could go from one to being the other like that. Snap of a finger. Donald Trump, I do not believe, has allegiances or alliances. He has goals. He does not have friendships. He has partnerships toward his goals, whatever they may be. Sometimes I think his goals are incredible and noble and just right for the United States of America. See the southern border wall as an example. And sometimes I believe Donald Trump's goals are misplaced and misguided. And man, do we have to be talking about this again or that again? Or why is he gnawing at this bone? So I do believe that Donald Trump has the ability to set that aside if he has an understanding with DeSantis that there's going to be a level of fealty. But here's the thing. DeSantis is not Mike Pence. Mike Pence had an ability to remain loyal to Trump as his vice president without being disloyal to his own inner core beliefs up until the end. And obviously, as Mike Pence has repeated over and over again, they're never going to see January 6th the same way. So I agree with John that Tim Scott and without DeSantis in the race, it just almost becomes token opposition if Ron DeSantis decides not to run. It's beginning to feel like a primary, as John puts it out of Lawrenceburg, a primary re-election campaign with little or no opposition. If the speculation that I have is right about Ron DeSantis today. All right, there's your little inside Washington, D.C. political moment. We'll delve back into Tennessee politics coming up in just a few minutes. We'll circle back to Washington, D.C. with Congressman John Rose. We'll talk debt ceiling in the 4 o'clock hour, and we'll also speak to him about his endorsement of the former President Donald J. Trump. See what he thinks about the Ron DeSantis speculation that I've offered to you. You on the phone, 615-737-9986. It's The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Learning more about the 21-year-old who broke into highly classified top secret documents and the police investigating after a woman was shot near the pedestrian bridge downtown. Plus, Governor Lee signing a new bill into law that relates to traffic congestion. That and more at 4. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I know the Bill Mack's talking about doo-dah, doo-dah. I'm not going to ruin his tease. Oh, doo-dah day. Hey, it's Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson and The Drive. 356 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We also have John Rose coming up just after the top of the hour. The congressman will be with us to talk a number of things, debt ceiling primary among them, and whether or not the Republicans will get some spending concessions from the Democrats. Certainly they should. They, after all, control the House of Representatives. We'll do that in the next few moments. In the meantime, the question as to whether or not Ron DeSantis will make a decision about whether to run, he says he is not going to make a decision until after the Florida legislature is done with its scheduled duties. Obviously, there's some rules in place, some laws in place in the state of Florida that would prevent him from being a candidate and a serving governor as well. So we'll get into more of that coming up in just a few moments. Get your thoughts as well as we continue. It's The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson. Back after the news.
Four o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Currently 66 degrees and just a beautiful day in the mid-state. We're expecting some more of those this week. Clear skies and starry nights. Complete weather and traffic in just a few minutes. Jack Teixeira, the Air National Guardsman who was granted access to highly classified information, was expected to see it because of his IT position. But those slides of briefings and detailed data allegedly taken by the 21-year-old to impress a group of teenagers spread beyond his intimate chat group and made its way to social media. Louis Martinez tells the investigative scope has expanded.
Somebody in that group also sent it out to a broader Discord group. But then it wasn't until 5 weeks later that these images started appearing on Twitter and on Telegram. And what we do know is that there is a former U.S. Navy sailor who was behind one of these accounts that has been in expressed support for Russia in the past. And they posted 4 images, some of which includes the one that was altered. It had the numbers of the Russian casualties and the Ukrainian casualties that was altered.
Teixeira was charged in Boston on Friday. Here in Tennessee, Channel 4 reports that Metro Police are investigating after a woman was shot near the entrance of the pedestrian bridge downtown. A 49-year-old woman from Cheatham County was seriously injured yesterday before 2 a.m. The woman was taken to Vanderbilt Medical Center. Metro Police said so far they have found out that the involved people know each other. Officials said they are now pursuing strong leads. And staying right here in the volunteer state, Governor Lee signed a bill into law providing more than $3 billion into easing traffic congestion.
The Transportation Modernization Act invests in roads in every part of the state and includes money to explore choice lanes where drivers would pay a fee to use in order to get to where they're going faster. Choice lanes would run alongside current roadways and interstates. 2 studies were released this year on how much time people spend in traffic. They show commuters in Nashville spend an extra 80 hours a year stuck in traffic. It was 51 hours extra in Memphis. Ken Weaver, WTN News.
And some entertainment news. Stand-up comedian Nate Bargatze broke the attendance record at Bridgestone Arena this past weekend with 19,365 people there. The Old Hickory native joined WTN's The Drive 2 weeks ago and mentioned how much he loves his home state and all of its people. Bargatze's Be Funny tour now continues all around the nation through November. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Here we go. Hour number 2 of The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. Matt Murphy in for Brian. It is 4:06. Happy to be with you. Thank you for being with us, whatever time you're giving us, whether it's 5 minutes or the full 4 hours. We are absolutely appreciative on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Lots to do. Still to come, I'll give you my full analysis of this so-called moral march that was going on down to the Capitol, expected to reach the Capitol around now. Mac Morey back in the newsroom is covering that like the morning dew. And he will have a report come, 25 minutes or so on and when it's news time on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I have the mission statement amongst those who are participating in the march, and we'll cover that for you coming up in just a few moments. We turn our attention to political matters involving Washington, D.C., although I'm certain that Congressman John Rose has a thing or two to say about things going on in the state of Tennessee. It's always good to catch up with John. He represents the 6th Congressional District and is always quick to share his thoughts on matters before him and before the United States with all of Middle Tennessee. Congressman, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Matt. Thanks for having me on WTN The Drive this afternoon.
It is always a pleasure to speak with you, sir, and I want to start with the conversation we were having last hour. A lot of folks, I guess, in attendance at a donor meeting in Nashville with the RNC. I don't know if you were there or not. I don't know exactly if they're announcing who all was in attendance, but we do know the former president of the United States was there. And on the heels of that, many of your colleagues have made certain announcements regarding who they plan on endorsing in the 2024 election cycle. And I don't want to lead you in any direction, John. I'll just ask, have you made a decision in that regard?
I have indeed, Matt. In fact, was honored to have dinner with the 45th president on Friday evening and on Saturday evening as well, but in a small group setting on Friday evening, and I shared with the president that I was endorsing him, and of course he was tickled. My wife and I were both there, and believe strongly that we need the type of leadership that the 45th president provided us, and we need to get this country back on track. And so, I don't really think it's a close call. Under Biden's leadership, America's weaker. We're less secure. We have a less robust economy. Our border is out of control, and our freedoms are being trounced every day. And our regard in the world has fallen dramatically. And so we've got a proven leader who, demonstrated in 4 years that, he knows how to lead this country. And I think it's a pretty easy choice, frankly. And so very proud to endorse the 45th president in his campaign to be reelected.
Congressman, maybe I'm not keeping up with the way the world moves now, but is this early to offer this endorsement to the President of the United States, or is it a matter that you feel this strongly that he is the man for the job in 2024 and beyond?
Well, I think it is a little early, frankly, but I feel very strongly. And so, what we're searching for in a leader is someone who will do what they say they're going to do. I mean, that to me, and of course, doing things that I think have been demonstrated to take this country in the right direction. And so for me, this isn't a tough choice. I think President Trump proved himself under extraordinarily difficult circumstances, under assault the entire time. In fact, he's still under assault. And I think any honest person would have to assess that President Trump produced almost unparalleled results in the short period of time that he was president. And so I can't see how there's a real question. There's some others out there who are toying with the idea of running, a few that are in the race, but I don't think there's anyone whose record really matches what the former president has already demonstrated he can do. And I want to see this country be strong. I ran, as you know, to help him implement his vision for this country, and was proud to get to help do that for a couple of years during his last 2 years in office, and sorry that wasn't there earlier to help make sure that he could be successful. I came to Washington, represent the views of the people in my district, because I knew they wanted to support the president just like I did. And so I hope that we get another chance to let him finish the work that he began.
Our conversation with Congressman John Rose ongoing on The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Along those lines regarding the president and his vision for the future, I Just one more political question I want to ask you about a couple of things going on in D.C. Do you believe that should he receive the nomination in the Republican Party, do you believe he'll be going up against Joe Biden? Do you think Joe Biden has the mental and physical stamina to endure another run?
Well, you asked two different questions there, so I do not. I'll answer the second question first, and the answer is no. He doesn't have the physical and mental stamina to do the job now.
I don't know what that is. I don't know where that's coming. Pardon me, John. I don't know where that was coming from. Anyway, go right ahead, please.
So I think it's already demonstrated this president is not up to the task, and that's why we see the world taking advantage of this country. Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine, the Chinese president, rattling his saber with respect to Taiwan, and this country just under assault, and freedom and liberty, and the free trade of the world under assault from despots around the world. And I think it's because they know that America has a weak president who's slow to respond, is perpetually late to the game in terms of making decisions and exerting the power and influence this country should have around the world. And I think we're a laughing stock at this point. So I don't think he's up to the task. Your first question, though, was whether I think that's who the Democrats will put up. And I think unless somehow it becomes just absolutely indisputably clear that he is not in control of himself and doesn't have the faculties to do the job, I fear that they will put him up as a candidate. And I only say that I fear that because, I think it's really questionable whether Democrats will, they'll come out in number and support him like they did in the last election. And I think it's a travesty, but I think that's what's going to happen. And so, I feel like, though, the best person we can run is President Trump. He has a proven record of leadership, and to me, that's really the end of the assessment.
John Rose, our guest right now, talking about his endorsement of President Donald J. Trump, former President Trump, for his 2024 campaign and whom he might be running against. I made the case in the first hour, John, that were it not for COVID, that Donald Trump would be president right now. And we now have learned so much about the origins of COVID that we did not know during the 2020 election cycle that seemed to make a lot of sense. And it also seems to make a lot of sense that this president, considering his financial conflict, his family's financial conflict with the Chinese, is not interested whatsoever in investing the time and energy and intelligence to try to figure out exactly what happened in 2019 and 2020. Former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, however, is testifying before the House of Representatives. I think it's in the Intelligence Committee, if I'm not mistaken. And he says that he believes the only explanation is that this was released from the Wuhan virology lab, either accidentally or on purpose by China. Do you share that assessment?
I do. I think he's exactly on point there. And I think, if you think about it, the number of people both here in the United States and around the world that have died as a result of this, I think it's inexcusable. I think we have to get to the bottom of this, and it's inexcusable that this president and the Democratic Party have refused to show even a modicum of interest in trying to get to that answer. We have to hold China accountable. We have become far too dependent on China, and frankly, that's in no small measure why I'm going to support President Trump for re-election, because I think he had a demonstrated track record of holding the Chinese accountable. And that's the kind of leadership we need. And I'm not sure any of the other candidates out there, even on our side, will do that in the same way that the 45th president would do it. I'm certain that the current president is unable or unwilling to hold the Chinese to account for what they've done.
Coming up pretty soon, we're going to have we're going to be at loggerheads, I guess is the best way to put it, regarding the debt ceiling. It seems like this happens every couple of years now, Congressman. It has to be frustrating for you, considering our conversations over the year and a half that I've been in the state of Tennessee. I know that you believe $32 trillion in debt is a significant problem. We don't need to continue to contribute to it. And I don't believe the Republican Party is asking for too much regarding concessions with the White House in order to raise the debt ceiling. Where are you on this, and what do the people of Tennessee need to know about it?
Well, I certainly believe that we should have a serious discussion. I think it's unconscionable that the current president is saying he refuses to negotiate. certainly not where we should be. If you look back over the last 25, 30 years, the last 8 times that we've had a serious taken a serious run at addressing the spending of this country, it's been occasioned by the necessity to increase the debt ceiling. So this is the time to do it. It needs to be done, as you've already indicated, $31.5 trillion in debt. It was one of the main motivations I had for running for office, is because I think the debt is the number one challenge that this country faces. It's a self-inflicted wound. We have to address it, and the sooner we start on it, the easier it will be. And so, we're going to force the president to the table, and I'm very confident under the leadership of Speaker McCarthy that we'll get that done. And we'll have to fight our way through the issues at hand, but we've got to at least turn back the clock on spending and undo what happened just in December, where there was a massive increase in spending. And some people say to me, well, don't we need more revenue? And the answer is that no, that's not the problem. We have a spending problem. And the best way to demonstrate that is to look back just over the last 2 years. The revenue of this country was the highest it ever was, federal tax revenues in fiscal year 2022, when we saw almost $4.9 or $4.9 trillion, and yet we still had a trillion-plus deficit. And if you think about that revenue was up 43% in just 2 years. It's an amazing statistic. And yet we still managed to spend more than we took in. And so we have to get spending under control, and the new Republican majority in the House is united in getting that done. We're going to fight to bring the Democrats to the table and force them to reckon with that problem.
Finally, John, I want to ask you a question that may not necessarily have to do with anything you're directly dealing with there in D.C., but it very much is on the minds of a lot of Tennesseans. We are 3 weeks now in the aftermath of Covenant, and obviously it was evil incarnate that went inside of the Covenant school and shot 3 adults and 3 children. It has led to a robust conversation about what we can possibly do to potentially prevent these types of things from happening in the future. Obviously, Democrats, they run to the refuge of screaming for gun control. We understand that argument. We've had it many times. A trickier discussion involves mental health and what can the state or the federal government do to flag individuals. I know that these are called red flag laws, and I know that when you say red flag laws, a lot of people raise their cockles up and they want to fight back against you before they even hear the discussion. How much, or is there anything that the government can do to identify mental illness as it exists among us and use that to help prevent individuals from getting guns that they may do harm to other people with or harm to themselves?
Well, I think the way you framed the question is, I think it's a very delicate issue of what can the federal government do, what can state government do. We do need to take a really serious look at what we should be doing in the mental health space. As I travel around our district back home, what I see is that it's the number one problem leading to homelessness. It's the number one problem leading to our jails being full, and it's the number one problem crowding our emergency rooms. So I hear this from law enforcement, I hear it from hospital administrators, and obviously I hear it from all of the different groups that are trying to deal with the homelessness issues, not just in Nashville, but indeed across our more rural areas of the district. And so we have a problem with mental health. We have to look back to what we did 40 years ago when we started closing our mental hospitals and long-term care facilities. And I think we have to readdress that and see how we get real services available and really deal with those people who have long-term mental health issues. Beyond that, I would tell you we have a problem as a society that, short of a revival of our religious faith, I'm not sure how we deal with that, and that we have people who think that harming other people is an acceptable way to express their frustrations and to deal with their anxieties, and that's just not appropriate. That's not a new problem in this country, but it's an ongoing problem, and we have to address that. I am a steadfast believer in the Second Amendment, and so I don't think taking away constitutional rights for the masses is the way to go. I remember back when I was in high school, at one point I had a principal who, when somebody in the class did something wrong, he wanted to punish the whole school, and that's never the appropriate way, it seems to me. And so we shouldn't be thinking about it that way. And then I might just pause for a second and say, first, we have to get in all the facts each time one of these events happen and assess, why did it happen? What could we have done to prevent it? And it's not at all clear to me that any of the proposals with respect to infringing on Second Amendment rights would have actually solved this problem. And so we shouldn't rush out and try to throw solutions at a problem before we even understand the contours of what led to the particular shooting in Nashville. It is always tragic when we see anyone harmed, any of these mass killing events, but we don't propose to take away First Amendment rights from people when these things happen. You could say maybe one way to solve this problem would be to cut down on the likelihood for copycat events by restricting the ability to cover that this happens.
Or eliminate,
right?
or eliminate the internet, right? Or to monitor and eliminate the internet in some fashion. I agree.
Right, and we wouldn't propose to take away people's First Amendment rights, even if we thought that might reduce the level of harm. And we also have to keep in mind we pay a price for our rights in this country. We have to listen to messages that we don't like. We have to listen to news that we don't like. We have to listen to opinions that we strongly disagree with, and we have to endure some of the carnage that comes with the rights that we have. But if you compare this country and to countries that have been ruled by despots around the world, and say, take for example just what Vladimir Putin is doing in Ukraine and in his own country, and you compare him to other despots around the world, and you think about the thousands, tens of thousands, indeed millions of people who've died at the hands of despots. And so it is a price worth paying, in my view. It is a heavy price, and it's easy for me to say that when I'm not the one personally paying that price at the moment. But it's a price that I think this country should pay to protect the broader freedoms of the American people. And I think it while it's a heavy price at times and a gut-wrenching situation, we should not throw away our rights in this time of grief and crisis.
I think it's well spoken. I'm desperately late, but one final thought on this point, and I'll let you go, John, because I know you're busy too. But, I saw how some Democrats hijacked this issue in the state legislature. And I was frustrated and expressed my frustration, not toward anyone personally and certainly not toward you, that more were not speaking out in defense of became a national narrative that this state is somehow racist because individuals violated Tennessee state legislative rules and attempted to speak when they did not have the authority or the order to do so. And I just wanted you to speak to that because the narrative in national media circles, I'm certain that you've seen it, is that, well, Tennessee's a racist place. It's always been a racist place. And I know and you know that just isn't so.
Absolutely, and I would say in a full-throated way that this is not about racism, and I think that's just a gross mischaracterization. This is about decorum in the legislature and legislative body, and I am hesitant oftentimes, Matt, to speak out about that because I want to stay in my lane. I'm not in the state legislature. The people didn't send me to Nashville to represent them. They elected the people that are there, and they made a considered judgment about what to do, and that's their place to make that judgment. I wasn't there to witness what happened, have only seen after the fact news coverage of it, and so I have to trust those people to make the decisions they've been empowered to make. But I will say, and without any reservation, it is completely unfair and unfounded to attack members of the General Assembly claiming that this is somehow a racist thing. This is not a racist thing. This is about individuals who failed to maintain their obligations to participate in the legislature in the way that they're supposed to. And we can debate about whether the sanction was appropriate or not, but the truth of the matter is, had they not violated the rules of decorum in the legislature, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's that simple.
John, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciated. We'll talk again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
There's Congressman John Rose of the 6th District. Running late, 4:25 will allow you an opportunity to reflect on that conversation in just a moment on Super Talk. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you until 7 tonight. We'll hand off to the great one, Mark Levin, at that time. No Brian Wilson this week. We'll get your reaction to Congressman John Rose coming up in just a moment. John saying that he's endorsing Donald Trump because he believes he's the best hope to get United States of America back on track where it was when Donald Trump was the 45th president of the United States. Now, obviously, he alluded to Ron DeSantis, at least DeSantis's impending decision as to whether or not to run against Trump, amongst several others. Already, we have an exploratory committee with Tim Scott. You've got Nikki Haley announcing that she's planning on running. Mike Pompeo saying that he would not be running for president of the United States during this cycle. I think you'll find a lot of viable candidates choosing to sit this cycle out because of the popularity of Donald Trump. Because, I mean, he has massive appeal. Here's the difficulty. Massive appeal in the base. Difficult to woo people over to his side to convince them that the media narrative that has been presented to many of them over the last several years is untrue. Trump is what he is. He's a known commodity. I think a lot of this has to do with the individual that he's running against. I think he runs against Joe Biden again and he destroys Joe Biden. I believe that. I think enough people would forgive him. I mean, how many of these T-shirts do I have to see that say, hey, how about $2.15 gas and a couple of mean tweets? How about that? I'd love to see that. It's 4:30. I'm going to see this right now. It's Mac Morey on the news. We're back in a moment on The Drive.
4:31, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. 66 degrees and a sunny day in Music City. Expecting more of those until maybe Friday. Some scattered showers expected, but no severe storms. Weather and traffic coming up in just a few minutes. Right now, a Memorial Monday rally in March is taking place. People have marched to the state capitol. They came there from McKendree United Methodist Church. This started about an hour and a half ago, and this is all to demand stricter gun laws here in Nashville. The march was led by religious leaders, and a mother of a 5-year-old who attends Covenant School spoke at this rally with tears in her eyes.
The last 3 weeks have been deeply painful. Our days are spent hearing children as young as 3 years old describe in horrific detail what they saw and heard. Third graders saw the dead bodies of their friends, not just coffins. That's right. Their classmates.
Tennessee Representative Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson are all present at this rally. And Governor Bill Lee has pushed for a stronger school safety plan and stricter background checks since this mass shooting at the Covenant School on March 27th. Over to the money news. Here's Daria Albinger.
From ABC News, Wall Street now. Stocks rise to start the first full week of earnings season. The Dow closed up 101 points, the Nasdaq rose 34, and the S&P added 13. State Street and other financial companies issued a mixed set of profit reports just days after the better-than-expected numbers from some of the nation's biggest banks, which kicked off the reporting season at the end of last week. Among the earnings to look for this week, Bank of America, Tesla, and American Express. Minnesota's announced a settlement in its lawsuit against Juul Labs and tobacco giant Altria, the first of thousands of cases against the e-cigarette maker to go to trial. The deal was reached just ahead of the closing arguments, and it will be kept confidential until the papers are filed in court within 30 days. David's Bridal is no longer saying "I do" to employing more than 9,000 workers. The layoffs were announced after the company announced it was filing for bankruptcy protection.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works, is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
I've spent the last 7 minutes of my life feeling like an old man trying to program a television. I guess that's what I've been. I'm over at, by the way, hello. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm in for Brian Wilson today. Brian back next Monday. Thank you for being with us. I'll be here all the week, 4:38, almost 4:39, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Would love to hear from you on the phone line, 615-737-9986. That's 615-737-9986. We give those numbers often and as quickly as possible to keep you on your toes. Opening up the phone lines for the first time really first time during the show, and we're almost 2 hours down. There is an event going on as we speak. It is, the 3rd or 4th or 5th March in the last 2 weeks regarding gun control legislation and what the Tennessee legislature will or will not do regarding said same. I have asked a question repeatedly of those that suggest that gun control is the answer, and that is, what specifically do you want? We will get into that momentarily on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Love to hear from you on it. Now, what I was doing, and I'm certain, Mason, you and Mac will get a kick out of this, you youngsters. I was trying to chat with the folks over there on YouTube TV. We got all these chats going on. I've got the super text line happening. I've got, my email. I mean, email seems almost antiquated nowadays. I get a letter in the snail mail in my box downstairs, and I automatically think it's some sort of virus. I mean, I do, because nobody does that anymore. Anyway, so I'm trying to put together I don't know what I need to do. It tells me I have to create a channel in order to chat.
I think you just need to log in with your Google account. Are you trying to get on YouTube?
I thought I was already logged in with my Google account. But maybe I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know. That's why I felt I'm like an old man trying to order a sandwich at Subway. I don't understand what you're asking me. I don't get your ways.
It's like you hit as much troubleshooting as I can do. Have you turned it back on and off again?
Thank you, because you're such a younger man, and it makes me feel better that you don't understand any of this crap either. Thank you. You made me feel better.
It is slightly confusing. If you assume things are already logged in, though,
I thought I saw my face, and then I don't know, and now who knows?
Clicking buttons you shouldn't be touching.
Right, and I'm screwing the TV up right now as we speak. It's like my father-in-law. My father-in-law was in town last week. Totally screwed my TV up. Like, Bob, I don't have regular he's got it on. I was looking for the signal. I'm actually throwing him under the bus. He didn't do all of these things. But he's done it in the past where he's on antenna, and he's like off the cable button, and he's hitting the source input. What are you doing?
It's your TV. Your rules.
It is true. It is true. Oh, look, wait a minute. You just said good afternoon to everyone from the group on the drive today. Did you not say that?
I did say that, but I have special access over here. Do you want me to say anything specific? I'll gladly.
You know what? I'll handle it. Thank you. I've got it taken care of. Don't you worry about it. David's in Columbia in the meantime. Hey, David. How are you?
Great, man. How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for calling.
Well, I've been thinking about this, and I want to run something past you. We, as a healthcare provider that can prescribe medications, have been under the microscope for the last 10 years about opioids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why not use the technology that they can push a button in seconds and tell our prescription histories? Use that technology, because I guarantee you all the mentally ill that they say they knew they had questions about and everything before they committed these mass murders, I guarantee you they were on some types of medications. Why can't we use that as the red flag, and they have to pass certain criteria before they can retain their right to carry or their right to purchase or that kind of thing until they are released medically? I don't know if it would work or not, but it's just something I was thinking about.
You're saying if individuals are on certain, I'm just trying to understand you. So
yeah,
if
certain psychotropic
drugs, then that is going to disqualify them from owning a gun.
Unless they're able to pass some type of application or an interview process where they are deemed capable.
Boy, it would my initial thought is, David, that it would really depend on what type of psychotropic drugs we're talking about. And, I mean, sadly, I think there's some legitimate use for said drugs, and thank you for the call. On first blush, it seems to be beyond the scope of the power of the government to do this, considering the Second Amendment of the Constitution. So that's first off. Secondly, I mean, what we are talking about, David, when we talk about doing these types of limiting factors because of drug use or because of an inability to understand right or wrong. We're essentially talking about red flag laws. Last week, Jack Johnson was drug through the mud, Senator Jack Johnson, based on his suggestion that if you are going to suggest that you can do anything regarding mental health and creating barriers between those mentally unable and a gun, that you better create that barrier without calling it a red flag law. Otherwise, it's going to be a non-starter in Tennessee, because the term red flag law carries with it certain connotations, negative connotations. But what you are essentially promoting is the idea of a red flag law that would automatically limit the ability of an individual to own a gun if they were under an umbrella of certain drugs. Boy, that's a broad brush. I don't know that I dismiss it out of hand, because I do believe that there's an overprescription of drugs going on. I do believe that pharmaceutical use broadly needs to be examined as to why we see so many of our young individuals in America today so willing to commit these heinous, evil crimes without regard for human life, without regard for their own lives. And until we get a handle on why we've seen a spike in this has the spike that we have seen in the willingness has nothing to do with the ability. I hope that makes sense. So much so that I want to repeat it. There's obviously been a spike in the number of individuals willing to obtain a weapon and to go out and commit mass murder. About that, there is no question. These are statistics. These are not opinions. So then the question becomes, why? Well, the why on the willingness has nothing to do with the ability. And so often in the aftermath of a shooting like Covenant, Democrats always want to go to the ability. The ability of an individual to obtain certain weapons in order to commit mass murder. They never want to talk about the willingness to commit mass murder and why that is. Is it a lack of faith? Is it a lack of spiritual faith? Is it the fact that we have so many youngsters drugged up on a variety of different psychotropic drugs that might be having a dramatic and negative effect that we have not explored to the fullness of the scientific community's ability because of pharmaceutical companies preventing that exploration? I, for one, believe that this conversation will lead us potentially to the answer, but it will also lead us to a lot of frustrated families and a lot of angry discussion about what is and is not appropriate in terms of pill taking in American society today. There's a pill for everything. And sadly and unfortunately, I think the transgender movement has taken up this model as their own. And I think that's a mistake as well. If you wonder why we've seen an uptick in the number of individuals identifying as transgender committing acts of violence, perhaps it has something to do with a society that tells those transgender people, if you just say this, do this, take this pill, take this hormone therapy, or change those pronouns, you'll be happy. There is zero chance that someone can promise or guarantee happiness in this fashion. Yet, whether intentionally or not, it's what they're doing. You're telling individuals full of hormones and emotions raging at a time where they're confused. Maybe they don't know what their sexual identity is. Maybe they're attempting to discover where their place is in the world in different types of ways. But our mouths as a society are writing promises, or at least some of our mouths are writing promises to some of these kids that our behinds can't cash. with regard to promising happiness. And how empty must it be if you are going through psychological issues when you're told that certain actions will guarantee you or at least lead you to happiness, and then they don't. What an empty feeling that must be. Can we not understand how that would lead to someone willing to commit these acts of violence? Now, there I go again trying to make sense of the senseless. We better start exploring why they're willing, not if they're able. They've been able for a long time. If you're 20 years old or 21 years old, you are able to find a gun. Even if you could not find, quote, an assault weapon, end quote, you could still find a handgun. 98% of the gun murders that happen in the United States of America happen with a handgun. They don't happen with a long gun. So all of this conversation about ability to secure weapons to commit murder, these are not the conversations we should be having. We should be having a conversation about the willingness to commit murder, in my estimation. It is 10 minutes until 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I promise you I'll get to your calls coming up in just a moment as we continue on the Matt Murphy. Well, it's not the Matt Murphy Show. I said it wrong. It's The Drive with Brian Wilson. My name is Matt Murphy, though. I do know that, and I know we have 2 more hours to go. Like I say, get to your calls and get to our man Brink Fiddler with Defense Systems. It's been 3 weeks since the tragedy of Covenant. Why no manifesto? We'll try to get some answers in that regard coming up in just a moment. 2 more hours to go on The Drive.
Five o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Got a weather and traffic report headed your way in about 5 minutes. Currently 67 degrees, a sunny day in Nashville. How does an Air National Guardsman have access to highly classified information? Well, as Pentagon correspondent Louis Martinez explains, Jack Teixeira was expected to access it.
He was only 21, but he got his top secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information. That's what it is, TSSCI. When he was 19, a year after he joined the Air National Guard and was assigned to this intelligence unit up there at the Air National Guard base on Cape Cod. And it's because of the nature of his job, where he worked in computer IT, essentially.
Teixeira is facing charges for allegedly showing highly classified documents to a group of teenagers that he befriended in a chat group. He was charged in Boston on Friday. We're also learning a former enlisted member of the Navy is now under investigation for allegedly spreading those leaked documents on social media. Back here in the volunteer state, it's National Work Zone Awareness Week this week, which means there will be more work zone safety messages on our interstates that are just trying to let you know to, hey, make sure you move over a lane if you're in a work zone. News 2 says that TDOT's campaigning for people to drive safer in those work zones as construction's going to ramp up here in the spring and summer seasons. TDOT reported over 3,800 crashes in work zones last year. 23 of those were fatal. 113 workers have been killed in the line of duty since TDOT began keeping records. That's in 1948. Drivers who violate the move over law in Tennessee can be fined up to $500 or spend up to 30 days in jail. And some growing outrage in Kansas City after a black teenager was shot in the head after ringing the wrong doorbell. Derek Dennis.
The family of 16-year-old Ralph Yarl says he was just trying to pick up his younger siblings from a neighbor's house but got the address wrong. The homeowner inside accused of shooting Yarl in the head. The teen is now fighting to recover. So far, no charges filed, but there's growing outrage. Even as authorities say it does not appear the shooting was racially motivated.
This child and this child's family knows that there are people working hard, a number of people working hard to make sure there is justice.
Mayor Quentin Lucas, civil rights attorney Ben Crump is representing the family and says the shooting was horrendous and unjustifiable.
And back here at home, Channel 4 says that a Franklin firefighter who has served for 40 years is now retiring. James Fox was with the FFD for 20 years after being a firefighter in the military for 20 years. During retirement, Fox said that he and his wife Jane look forward to traveling and antiquing, and he says, quote, "I enjoyed my time here. I thought I'd never see this day," end quote. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather are on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Brian will be back next Monday. It's 5:07, and a good afternoon to you. Thank you for being with us. We'll get to more of your telephone calls coming up in just a few moments. A lot of things going on, a lot of action, a lot of activity. Obviously, there's another march descending upon the state capitol. This march is to demand some sort of change in Tennessee gun laws that would potentially prevent an atrocity and a tragedy, evil as it is, what we saw 3 weeks ago today. It was just, although it feels like so much longer, it was just 3 weeks ago today that we learned of the tragedy of the Covenant School. With that in mind, we kind of reflect on what has happened between then and now. And in doing so, we wanted to talk with one of our experts on these matters, and that is Brink Fiddler of Defense Systems. And he agreed to join us in studio. As you might expect, he is a very busy man nowadays, and rightly so. It is a sad thing. I've long said, and you guys that listen to my regular show from noon until 3, you know that Brink is not only a friend of mine, but he's also he's a client. I strongly endorse, if you're a business owner, if you are a decision maker in a church, a school, or any place that people gather, that you call Brink and get him to schedule an appointment with you to sit down and talk with you about how you can better prepare yourself for the unlikely event that something like this might happen to you. That said, I've told Brink every time he comes on that I want him to run. I want to run his butt out of business, boy. I want to. No, you can go ahead and hit it there. Mace, he's the new guy around here.
Oh, gotcha.
I want to run your butt out of business. I want you to call me one day and say, well, we're closing up shop because we don't need to do this anymore. And you want the same thing. I think you want to find a new line of work.
That'd be ideal. Yeah, for society anyway. I mean, it certainly would be a good thing.
What has boy, this is a loaded question. What's the last 3 weeks been like for you? A lot of emotions.
Yeah, but just handling the onslaught of business, as you can imagine, that this creates for a company like us that does this for a living, and also having to do that for the Covenant School, but also working through the it's hit really close. I mean, I knew Catherine Kuntz; she was a friend of mine. Will Kenny's dad, Wes, is a friend of mine. So trying to process all that, and grieve at the same time of dealing with business growth, but also trying to serve Covenant School, and the aftermath. I mean, they all had tons of questions about the faculty, especially, just wanted to hear it from me that they did it right. They just they're second guessing themselves, a lot of them, but they did it incredibly. But then also trying to serve them in their new space where they're going temporarily, and trying to help them get that place secured, and then their other campus they'll go back to in the fall. So it's been a lot. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's been a lot.
And there has to be a lot that goes into, I mean, obviously the physical security consultation, thinking about the fall and reopening that facility. I would also think there's a lot of psychological aspect to this that is beyond my pay grade, your pay grade probably too, but in terms of the children, and because you would think that some of the kids that were there that day will be returning to the campus next fall, and everything that goes into that. I'd never considered it until just this moment.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. But walking through their temporary space today was just teachers getting their temporary classrooms ready and doing all the things teachers do. And so walking through, seeing them do that, but also talking to all of them. And, they're still working through it too, right? One day at a time, but they still got to serve these kids. And, but what are these kids going to be experiencing for their entire lives?
But it also occurs to me, Brink, and maybe it's your experience, maybe not, that obviously the kids that were directly impacted, that were there, and some of those kids that were indirectly impacted, that were evacuated immediately, that didn't probably really understand what was going on while they were running away from the school. Kids are amazing. I mean, and the bounce back ability that young people have is pretty amazing. Without understanding the complexities of the world that we live in, without having that weight on them like some of the teachers do, I think the teachers are going to need some long-term, I won't say help, but, help in coping with the impact of what happened 3 weeks ago.
They will, for sure. I mean, everybody handles it differently, but, just today I saw one of the teachers that's the one that's very visible in that body cam footage that's waiting out front and, giving them directions. I just saw her today and talked to her for a while, and she's handling it differently than some of the other people, and it's all over the board. It depends on who you are. Trauma is very real, and as you know, because you've been through our training, we talk about that. Like, don't gloss over the mental trauma piece of this, like, because it's going to last for years. I mean, you think about think about the effect it had on those police officers, right? There's 3 to 6 officers that were involved in carrying those 9-year-olds out of that building to try and get them to an ambulance. They're never going to be the same.
Well, and we don't talk about this very much, and I understand why, but Officer Engelbert and what was the other officer's name? Colaza.
Oh, yeah, Colaza.
They had to shoot somebody.
Right.
They had to kill somebody.
Yep.
And I've never had to kill anybody. I can't, even if you got to do what you got to do, even if it's a bad guy, and when you lay your head down on the pillow at night, you know you did the right thing and you saved people's lives, you still had to take a life.
Sure.
And that has its own trauma, too.
Strangely enough, we were training I won't name the school, but we were training a school on this past Friday, and in the audience, one of our students was Engelbert's fiance. So we got pretty connected with her pretty quick, as you can imagine. But we're really checking on him. I mean, Tracy was specifically asking her, about him, and just, because that is a deal. I mean, you got to think about all the stuff they saw beyond just taking the shooter out. I mean, that alone can have different impacts on people. But the rest of the stuff that went on in that school, that they had to see and experience, and they got to process all that too. They're not robots. I mean, they're humans.
I want to get to a few of the callers on the drive because some of them are waiting, and all of them want to talk about gun laws and where we are. And I know I don't want to get you too far out of your lane, but I also think you're a really good person to speak to this because you served for 18 years as a Metro Nashville police officer. You've done this for how many years now?
Defense Systems? 6.
Yeah, 6 years now with Defense Systems. And so you see the necessary, you understand more than most the necessary fortifications and the necessary preparedness that we need to have in this world. Yet still, as I know you sitting here today, you're a proponent of the Second Amendment. You believe in the right to keep and carry. You believe in the ultimate right of self-defense, correct?
100%.
So I think you're a good person to be here to talk about some of these issues because we've also seen over the last couple of weeks a political hijacking of this issue. And it has frustrated me to no end. I have to speak to it. I have to talk about what happens on the floor. I have to explain why you can't do what these 3 lawmakers did. But then I have to watch them on national news media taking every bit of oxygen out of this room with regard to the people that lost their lives and how we can better prepare and make sure that our young people are safe when they go to schools.
100%. Yeah, that has definitely happened. And, there's a saying out there that never let a crisis go to waste, right? And so that's exactly what's happening here. I mean, people are still grieving, hurting. Family members are still coming into town to deal with the loss of life and that kind of stuff. And then that kind of thing happens in the General Assembly, and that's just it's sad. That's where we are.
The conversation about gun control and about what to do about people willing to commit mass murder has created an opinion-based divide unlike any that I've seen really other than the abortion debate. And I don't understand the thought process of those that believe that passing this law or that law will make all of this go away or most of it go away or some of it go away. But I bet you that they don't understand me either. And they don't understand why we don't understand what they're saying about gun control. And I'm sure that in your line of work, you're dealing with a lot of different opinions about the issue of guns, et cetera. I mean, I know that you kind of keep your focus on your job at hand, regardless of the politics of the people that you're helping or the ideologies of the people there. But you see it. You're on the front line.
Oh, 100%. And we don't. Yeah, you're right. I don't even touch that with a 10-foot pole. And like we train every organization out there. It doesn't matter to me what any of that means. I mean, I want you alive, and everybody has to deal with a lot of active violence in the world. But you're right. I'm like you, being former law enforcement. I saw firsthand that like criminals don't care about your law. That's why they're criminals, right? Like that's just the way it is. And I understand the mindset of, well, at least if we pass a law, we've done something, right? That's like A good example of this is after the Parkland, Florida shooting. There is a school in Tennessee, I'll leave it there, that the parents obviously were freaked out, threw a bunch of money at the school and said, do something, and they put up 30-something cameras additionally.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't do much for you except show you what happened afterwards, right? If you're not using them proactively, which most places are not. But they felt good because they did something. And when those parents pull on that campus, they can see all those cameras and they can go, we did something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the same mindset, if you will. But they feel like they're checking a box and something's at least being accomplished, even though it's really not being something. Yes, is being accomplished, but it's not addressing the problem at all.
For me, and I'm not trying to drag you into the politics of this necessarily, but for me, my frustration comes in talking to people that believe that gun control or bans on this type of weapon or that type of weapon is the answer, is that it doesn't make logical sense until you get all of them, right? Because the criminals are going to pay no attention to any of these laws.
Right.
They don't already. I mean, I'm not being flip and I've said over the past 3 weeks to people who challenge me on my position on this, well, if laws made all the difference, correct me if I'm wrong, Covenant School was a gun-free zone.
Sure.
Right? And yet still this occurred. So like you say, criminals are simply not going to pay any attention to your laws until you take away all of the ability for them to. And I would suggest that is an impossible task in the United States of America. And it's a fool's errand to suggest that the criminals will not still find their way to weapons, and the law-abiding citizens will remove the weapons because they're law-abiding citizens, and you're going to further exacerbate the problem.
Sure. Does anybody believe that it's totally lawful for cartel members in Mexico to have full automatic machine guns? Is that probably against the law in Mexico?
Is against the law.
No, it is against the law in Mexico.
And yet they still have them.
Right. Criminals are going to criminal, right? Like, it's just the way it is.
Brink's with us for at least the foreseeable future. So if you have a question for Brink Fiddler of Defense Systems, I invite you to call those in. I want to make sure when we come back, I want, and I know that there are certain things that you know that you can't talk about, and there are certain things that you know that you can talk about. I've kind of formulated a basic timeline or a basic, movement from A to B to C with regard to what happened at Covenant School, and I just want to get your thoughts on it and how truly the actions of the individuals. I just want to highlight this, how the actions of the individual. I'm not trying to belabor it again. I'm not doing that, but I just want to make sure that folks understand that real people in trauma situations saved lives on the day that this event happened. We'll go back to that with Brink Fiddler in just a moment. It's 5:19 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
We're learning more about the leaker of the classified documents in the Pentagon. Plus, the Transportation Modernization Act has been signed into law by Governor Lee here in Tennessee. What does it mean? What does it do? We talk about it. 5:30, Super Talk, 99.7.
What does it mean?
Well, you got to wait. About 5 minutes, Murphy.
What?
Sorry, sir.
Don't make me wait. What are you... Tease. 524 Super Talk 99.7 WT and Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson. Brian back next Monday. Brink Fiddler with us. I don't know. I needed to talk to you. I mean, Brink asked me right before we started the show. He's like, well, is there anything specific? And I said, look, I think I want to get back to talking about real world solutions and helping people understand kind of the complexity of what went on 3 weeks ago and away from the politicking of all of this, which we've been immersed in over our heads. We're drowning in it for the last week and a half, sadly, because some want to make it about themselves. So that's the entire purpose here. Real quick. Tell Brink that Tim from Cro-Magnon Targets said hello.
Oh, yeah.
How about that? I really appreciate the work he's doing. It's sad to watch, knowing that there was no film or he's talking about the film or the reinforcements that weren't present. Obviously, we learn things in every event.
Sure.
And I would imagine that if you and I got in your truck and we drove around the city of Nashville and looked at where the population gathers, you'd find plenty of soft spots like that. I mean, and as we learn, I mean, do you think building techniques will be as such that if you get commercial grade buildings in populated areas that you're just going to see more and more that they're automatically putting those types of films to protect those buildings?
Yeah, and I think that probably needs to be a code moving forward. You know, there's a lot of conversation about what can be done, and I know I will say Governor Lee has a school safety working group that he put together after Uvalde, and those guys have been really working on tackling some of these things from a state legislative level and from the governor's office level. So they're working on things like that, and they've been very open ears about kind of all that and the stuff that we look at and, you know, our study of these events. And so I think there's going to be I know there's some stuff coming out legislatively this session that at least starts that process, but I think there's a much more of a need for it, just like fire code, right? There's a lot of conversation legislatively speaking about, well, we can't make a private school do it. Well, why not? I mean, you make private schools do fire safety, right? I mean, this is something that Tennessee has an opportunity to lead in and really be the model for the entire country. And so I think forced entry protection for glass is certainly one of those things that needs to be talked about, and especially where there's vulnerable people, which is pretty much everywhere there's glass. So, you know, we're 10 years after Sandy Hook, right? And Sandy Hook, the way he accessed that school was shooting through the glass. So there needs to be a lot more conversation around forced entry
And I've
protection.
seen it firsthand because I saw a testing session that you did locally, and I cannot tell you how impressed I was. I knew that kind of stuff existed, but I had no idea it existed to the level that it does.
You didn't just see it, Matt. You participated.
I did. I took a swing or two with a sledgehammer and a crowbar, and to no effect.
Right. Yeah. No, it's legit. There's some great products out there that help with that.
Let's talk to a few people before we do, though, and I promise you I'll get to you guys. I'm going to lock the door and make Brink stay so we can talk to a few folks. But I don't know how to ask this other than to ask it. After analysis and review, after being on site, you don't want to lose any lives, but I have to feel like, I mean, lives were saved based on the actions of the teachers, based on their training, and it seems to me, based on kind of the time frame that's been presented to me and the knowledge of where our loss of life occurred, that it was minimized considerably based on the actions of the teachers. In other words, the three kids in particular, I mean, there was a fire alarm going off, so they were going through their fire training initially, correct?
That's right.
And do you believe that, too, after your analysis, that I don't want to say that, I mean, obviously, you're going to learn, too. You want to save every life.
Right.
But between saving every life and saving as many as possible, I mean, I think this was a success in terms of the training that the teachers received. I don't want to minimize the loss of 6, obviously.
I would say, yeah, it's a success for the teachers that they were able to put it into action. I mean, yes, training's important, right? But they have to implement it in the moment. And I've seen police officers freeze under less stress than they were put under. So again, and I've told everybody that'll listen, the teachers are the story here. I mean, those teachers are the ones that sent those kids home that day. Their ability to perform under that amount of stress while somebody's trying to murder them and their children, to me, is just, they have the heart of a teacher, but they're also like mama bear, right? Like those are their kids too. And I think that's what helps them in that moment perform, is their desire to protect those kids.
And without a desire to get too specific, it is my understanding that one particular teacher, I mean, as she was leading the kids out, had she not had the presence of mind to get her kids back in the classroom and get the door locked.
Yeah, yes, very much so. Matter of fact, the teacher that lost 3 kids while there's gunfire going off 15 feet away had the wherewithal to get kids back.
To get a door locked.
Not only get door locked, get kids back in the classroom, get door locked, and get the window covered, and get the kids where they need to be.
Wow.
And there's a classroom right next to her, the same thing. Everybody performed well. I'm not diminishing anybody's performance, but I know what specifically was happening outside their classroom, and then a few minutes later through their classroom doors. And it's that whole group is the story here. That whole staff is amazing.
All right, your calls, as promised, coming up in just a moment. It's 5:30. Right now, we get the payoff. See, we had the tease, and now we get the payoff from Mac Maury in the newsroom on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Patience is a virtue. Now you get those stories. 5:31, I'm Mac Maury. Weather and traffic in just a few minutes. 67 degrees currently in Music City. Jack Teixeira, the Air National Guardsman who was granted access to highly classified information, was expected to see it because of his IT position. But as Louis Martinez explains, the 21-year-old who took that highly classified information to impress a group of teenagers in a chat room broke a national trust.
He needed access to those rooms where the sensitive computers are that hold classified information. He needed access to those classified networks, and potentially that's how he could also gain access to the documents themselves. It's built on trust. The whole classification system, the whole background check system is based on trust that once you get that national security clearance, that you're going to maintain the secrecy. You actually have to sign non-disclosure agreements as well. So there's a lot of violations here.
Teixeira was charged in Boston on Friday. We're also learning a former enlisted member of the Navy, Sarah Bills, is under investigation for allegedly spreading those leaked documents on social media. Here in Tennessee, Governor Lee signed the Transportation Modernization Act into law. It's going to invest $3.3 billion to keep up with growth and ease traffic congestion. Some of the money will go to explore choice lanes, which officials explain commuters could pay to use.
These will be additional lanes that run alongside our current roadways, interstates, where we could have an additional lane or lanes in the future to where you could have a choice to get into these lanes and be able to get to where you're going faster.
And studies released this year on how much time people spend in traffic show commuters in Nashville spend an extra 80 hours a year stuck in traffic. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you into higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Lots going on. Man, I've got a list. I told you I've got like 18 things to talk about. B&A got evacuated yesterday or over the weekend. We'll discuss. There was a mass shooting in Dadeville, Alabama that's not getting a lot of conversation at all. The crime rate in Chicago's through the roof. There was a rave or some sort of violent mob broke out in Chicago over the weekend as well. And the new mayor, Mayor Brandon, way to go, Brandon. Mayor Brandon says, well, you know, we need these kids a space to breathe. He actually said that kids need spaces to, you know, move around and you know, to let things breathe a little bit. What, like a park? How many parks do you need in Chicago? Anyway, more on that coming up in just a little bit. And at 6 o'clock, I want to talk about Cameron Sexton as the Speaker of the House. We have in the state of Tennessee, we need to talk about it. We need to this is the place to come and talk about these things. And rightly or wrongly, I'm not judging it. I'm not saying he's done anything wrong or right or whatever or indifferent, but it is time to talk about the growing Cameron Sexton issue that we have in this state. And I'll describe what that is if you don't know. Coming up at 6:05. Right now, Brink Fiddler is with us of Defend Systems, talking about the 3-week aftermath, what we've learned, what we know, and what we can do to help protect ourselves and our family in a very, very troubling world. And you have a lot of questions and thoughts and comments, and I want to get to you right now with Cheryl first up. Cheryl, thanks for calling in to The Drive. No Brian Wilson, Matt Murphy, and Brink Fiddler in.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Brink. It's a pleasure to talk to you, gentlemen.
Sure. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just kind of keying off of the gentleman who spoke earlier about, the fact that we do have our pharmacies all networked in this state for reasons around opioids, but there's a kind of a deeper issue in this, too, that I think needs discussion as well. I have been actually thinking about this very same thing, but not to stop somebody from getting a gun, not to prevent them, but to slow roll kind of their application process for further evaluation. Because every mental health professional in the state of Tennessee that's licensed has an ethical code online that if they are concerned that somebody could do harm to themselves, we take action. I'm in the mental health professional field myself. And so we have to, call for mobile crisis for an evaluation. There are things that we're asked to do. And I'm wondering if there could be more education on behalf as well, because there are certain medications that, people that if they don't take their medication, it's a problem, like a big problem. And it would show the name of the doctor, and then would allow for some further evaluation and assessment with the person who is their caregiver. And, we all have to ask when somebody is asking to harm, has thoughts of harming themselves, do you have any firearms in the house? Does anybody else have firearms that you have access to? And ask those questions. There's also some testing tools that can be utilized to kind of also evaluate somebody in the process. And so there's just a myriad of things on the mental health side that I think we're not talking about. And a lot of these people would come through with flying colors, in all honesty. But there's going to be some, I can't tell you the pain that I've seen on behalf of individuals who work in this field who had somebody take their life or take somebody else's life that they didn't do something about, that they had a feeling or they didn't ask a question. And I just think it needs some enhancement around training just to keep it in the front of our mind.
This is one of those issues, Cheryl. It's been my experience doing what I do, that when you speak broadly about the issue, everyone's almost in uniform agreement. So if I were to say something along the lines of, do we all agree that mentally disturbed people should not have access to guns? Almost everyone listening would say, well, of course, if they're mentally. But when you start getting down to specifics, then we start talking about, well, what's one person's definition of mentally disturbed versus another person's? How do we classify that? How do we quantify it? How do we identify it? And the conversation starts breaking up. But I am so glad that you called, because it is important that we look at it from 50,000 feet, recognize that we're all in fairly uniform agreement that there are certain restrictions and parameters that can be placed on the Second Amendment that do not preclude our rights as citizens of the United States, that could potentially make people safer from those that are mentally incapable of owning getting their hands on a gun. I think you're absolutely right to bring it up.
I would 100% agree with that. And to your note on, you guys have the ethical duty to report if they're a danger to themselves, but that also includes if they're a danger to others, right? So
exactly.
We have testing tools in place that evaluate deeply into the psyche of people. Hello, I had to go through it to become a police officer, right? And to your point, Cheryl, yes, some people slip through, even in law enforcement. I mean, we've seen that. So no system is perfect, but a system that scrutinizes this better than the current system we have is certainly welcome. It just has to be, as you think and I think, it has to be done correctly. It's going to need a lot of thought is going to need to put into it, but that's where the problem lies, right? Is mental health. At the end of the day, if you're going to mass murder people, you have a mental health problem.
Well, and Cheryl, thank you for the call. I want to move to as many as I can, and I've got to get to another question that many people on the super text line are asking of Brink, but you automatically get to the comments of like 6012, which says every parameter is an infringement. She's an idiot. You can harm yourself with plenty of other things. Well, I mean, I guess there are 100%ers out there that disagree with my premise that most of us agree that mentally disturbed people shouldn't have guns. Okay, so be it. I wanted to ask you this, and you may have information that you can't share, and if you do, tell us.
Sure.
It's been 3 weeks we were all told that this person that committed this act had a lot of writings. And I know you look at me the same way every time we get to motivation, because I know your focus is not necessarily motivation, because you've taught me this, right? The motivation behind every mass shooting is different.
Yep.
However, natural curiosity and an ability to try to make sense of the senseless compels people to try to want to know what's going on. What do you know, if anything?
I know quite a bit. That some of it I can kind of expound upon. There's not going to be any clear direction out of those writings. They're kind of all over the place. So if you think if they are ever released and you think there's going to be a clear and concise, oh wow, this is why this person did it. No, not going to happen. It's like there's a lot of detail in there, but it's literally all over the place. The other thing I can say is part of what is being weighed on the release of that information, and to be honest with you, kudos to law enforcement for this, because they're being very cautious, is the amount of detail that are in those writings could potentially aid a future person that would try and do something like this. And they want to be real careful about that as well. And so, and I get, they're going to get pushback from everybody, about whether they release, whether they don't. And as of right now, based on what I know, and I haven't seen it, but based on what I know about it, at this moment, I agree with their decision not to release it yet. Or maybe release a redacted version when they do, just so they can help answer some of those questions like you had with the natural curiosity, but without providing any kind of how-to intelligence to other potential shooters down the road.
We do know, and I think this is fairly public knowledge, that this person had it in her mind for a long time to commit an act of mass violence.
I don't know if that's public knowledge. It is now, but that's true. Over a decade, that this is something like this has been in this person's mind. I can say that.
And sometimes 1 and 1 in cases like this just doesn't equal 2, right? And I think a lot of the natural curiosity wants to say, well, this person classified them. I'm just going to use this as an example because many people are saying it and many people are thinking it. Well, this person classified themselves as transgender with everything going on and people claiming that there's a war against transgender people. That's obviously probably why. I think it's a far more complex issue, and I think it goes far deeper into the issue of mental instability than just trying to fit, here's a square peg, put a square, put it in a square hole and we're done. It's a far more complex issue, it seems to me, than that.
I'd agree with that. And, that argument, it's convenient, right? That
I mean, it's in the news. We've got it. Yeah,
it's very convenient, but it does not line up with the facts or the evidence. I mean, the fact that this particular person was thinking about doing this, not even at this location, totally different location, over a decade ago, does not fit the narrative of, oh, this is why it was done. At the end of the day, it was done because the person was mentally ill and wanted a mass murder.
Is it your belief that she picked Covenant School simply because of her familiarity with it?
I would think that's part of it, but this was not the only one that she thought about or planned on, and other locations weren't even a school, right? So there was just murder in this person's mind and in their heart, right? And that's a spirituality problem, right?
I call it a willingness problem. I don't, I don't know how else to put it, but we keep talking about the ability, and look, there's nothing wrong with talking about the ability. Sure. Ability goes into, should mentally unstable people have guns? Ability goes into how secure and locked down should our schools be? Ability goes into a lot of these things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in a free and open society. What is much trickier to deal with is the willingness, and it is nonsensical to most of us, and we sit here, and I do it as much as anybody because I want to make sense of it too. Right. And by definition, sane people can't make sense of what insane people do.
Right. And then, like, trying to understand, like, you, Matt Murphy, having the willingness to walk out here today and go execute a bunch of people. Like, we can't even wrap our brains around that. So, and again, back to this manifesto and understanding the why, I understand, like, we as humans crave closure, which is, P.S., why we leave ourselves in bad situations a lot of times. But that's just human nature to crave that, but we're never going to to what you always say, make sense of the senseless, because it's coming out of the mind of somebody that we'll never understand. Never, ever, because we don't have that in us or in our heart. I mean, we certainly have a spirituality problem in this country. There's no question.
Jennifer is next up in Shelbyville. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I was a HR manager several years ago. I believe it was when Brink first opened his business and started doing training. And he came out to our manufacturing facility in Mount Juliet.
Is this Tachi S?
Yes.
Hey, Jennifer,
yes.
how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It was absolutely one of the most eye-opening trainings I have ever been a part of. Not only did, and I'm not trying to give a plug here, but this was great. Brink walked around the entire facility inside and out with me and did a full assessment of what we were doing right in our facility and what we needed to change, and definitely brought several things to our attention. And I just wanted to say, for anybody running a business, having that kind of assessment done of your business, not just schools, but I mean, these kinds of things are happening at Walmart. So, any kind of business that you have where you are responsible for the lives of other people, it is great to have that kind of assessment done in your business and to know and find out what you can do to make your business safer for the people that are there. And I am very glad that you were available for this school in Nashville and able to help them be more fortified and prepared for this kind of incident. And secondly, I would love to see the Tennessee House put some legislation on the floor to change how we build schools in Tennessee in the future so that we don't deal with this kind of stuff anymore in the schools by fortifying the buildings.
Amen. First, thanks for the kind words, but there is some stuff coming out of this session that does involve future construction of schools. It's a small step in the right direction. It's not everything I wanted, but obviously with stuff like that, if you throw a big hunking bunch of things at it, then the fiscal note comes up and you get a lot of pushback. So, but we have made some headway there. You know me at this point, Jennifer, I'm not going to quit screaming this from the rooftops. And so I think we're going to get some traction, but we do have a real opportunity as a state to be a leader in this moving forward, especially with how our schools are constructed. So thanks for all that.
Wonderful.
I appreciate it. Good to hear from you.
Great call, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Good talking to you.
Good to talk to you as well. It's 5:51, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. That's going to wrap it up with Brink Fiddler this hour of The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My man, thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate the analysis and the breakdown 3 weeks out, and I hope not to have you back on the radio.
Right. Amen.
Yeah, no doubt. But you're a busy man right now, and rightfully so. We'll be back in just a moment. There's news coming up, and one more hour of The Drive. Lots to get into on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.602, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Currently 67 degrees, and we're in for a solid weather week here in Middle Tennessee. Complete weather and traffic report in about 5 minutes. A Moral Monday rally and march happened today in hopes of ending gun violence in the city. They began at McKendree United Methodist Church, and then they walked to the state capitol. The march was led by religious leaders. One mother of a 5-year-old who attends Covenant School spoke with tears in her eyes.
We went through classrooms that looked like they were frozen in time with March 27th still written on the boards. The trauma's not going to dissipate. It's not going to leave us or our children. It'll just find a home within us, and we'll learn to live with it. The most painful question I have had to answer from my 5-year-old, who keeps proudly telling me how brave his teachers were and how they knew exactly how to keep him safe from the bad guy. But he asked Mommy, how did they know to do the practice? Has this happened before? And I said, yes. He said, a lot, Mommy? I said, yes.
Tennessee Representatives Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson were all present at the rally. Over the nation's capital, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says the House will vote in coming weeks to both raise the debt ceiling and reduce federal spending. Ann Flaherty has more from Washington.
McCarthy says the House will soon take up legislation that would raise the debt ceiling. But to satisfy Republicans, the bill also would freeze federal spending, enact stricter work requirements, and claw back unused COVID money. The legislation is not expected to survive the Senate. Here's Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
What we got today was not a plan. It was a recycled pile of the same things he's been saying for months, none of which has moved the ball forward an inch.
Over to a crime story here in Middle Tennessee. Police have learned more about the case involving Ann Jordan, who is running an illegal, unlicensed daycare. And on April 10th, she had 7 children at her apartment, all 16 months or younger. And not all 7 made it alive that day. A mother arrived to pick up her 3-month-old child, and with no answer at the door for 10 minutes, eventually she decided to enter this unlocked door to find her baby dead, cold to the touch. The other 6 children were all unharmed. Jordan was found later that night at Harpeth State Park. Big cuts on her arms, police believed to be self-inflicted. The last known contact with Jordan that day was 12:30 from one of the parents over text message. After that, texts soon became undelivered. And there is some growing controversy in Sacramento after a hip-hop star claims racial bias led to him being kicked out of an NBA playoff game. Alex Stone.
The rapper who goes by E40 is a well-known supporter of the Warriors. As the Golden State Warriors took on the Sacramento Kings over the weekend, E40 claims he was heckled and addressed a heckler in what he called in a statement an assertive but polite manner, and that then security guards ordered he leave. E40 claims security saw a disagreement between a black man and a white woman and assumed he was at fault. The Kings say they are investigating his ejection, but witnesses say E40 was standing, blocking the view of others, and was warned and then did not comply with security.
And that is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
All right, it's 6:09. Good evening. Welcome. The drive in progress until 7 o'clock. We'll hand off to Mark Levin, the great one. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm not the great one. I am not the man. Brian Wilson off today and this week. He will be back Monday. It is Monday today, April 17, 2023, our episode 320 together, and we're happy to have you for the final hour of the drive. Your telephone calls and your super text on the way, 615-737-9986. Thanks to Mac Morey back in the newsroom. Mason doing a great job. I haven't mentioned how good of a job you're doing. I've been busy. I've been a little off.
Today's been a little all over the place today.
Have you felt that way?
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Independent of me feeling that way? You feel
absolutely.
that way?
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe it's an environment thing. Maybe we need to open. Now, you know what? Tomorrow, show outside. How about that?
I'd love that.
Wouldn't it be great?
It's going to feel great outside. If I can get the equipment out there.
It's my understanding that if we could get the equipment to the roof, we can do the show on the roof. That's what I've been told.
I will hold you to that.
I mean, I've not been told that by anyone in any position of authority. I've just been told it's some random.
See, that changes things. That changes things just a little bit.
Yeah, considerably. I'll just blame you, though.
See how that works? I'm easier to get rid of than you are, right?
Oh boy, that really depends on but that's a loaded question. I know that depends on your point of view. All right, I said that I had 15 or 16 subjects at the beginning of the show, and I feel like I still have 13 of them. So we're going to try to run down as many of them as possible, including your telephone calls and thoughts and comments on everything discussed on the drive today. So let me tell you what I mean, and I'm getting to the new mayor, Brandon Johnson, the next mayor of Chicago, in just a moment. You will not believe what he had to say. So let me tell you what I mean when I say that we have a developing Cameron Sexton issue. If you follow politics in the state of Tennessee, you know that Cameron Sexton is the Speaker of the House. He's always been the Speaker of the House as long as I have been here, but I understand that he was not Speaker of the House very long prior to my arrival. There was the Glenn Casada. I hope I'm saying that properly because this is before my time. You folks on the super text line, correct me if I'm not. Casada, one way or the other, Glenn was the Speaker of the House, and he's not anymore, and now he's in a lot of trouble violating criminal statutes. There are legitimate talking points and questions about what has happened over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, regarding leadership generally and Cameron Sexton's leadership specifically. Part of what we do as a community is we reflect on the leaders that we elect to do the job in the General Assembly as to their performance. And as a part of the electronic public square at Supertalk 99.7 WTN, it is part of our responsibility to the public that we talk about these sorts of things and receive from the said community feedback as to where they are on these issues. Y'all with me so far? So, as has been much discussed on The Drive and on Matt Murphy's show and 9 to Noon and during Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis, I don't have to belabor it. I don't have to go over it again. You know what happened. 3 individuals broke the rules. They violated the rules of the chamber. They attempted to convince members of the gallery and others in the rotunda to bum rush the chamber, and don't tell me they didn't. It's exactly their point. They desired to be arrested on the floor. They were completely out of order. And now they've turned that narrative around to the point where they claim that we, you and I and others who expect basic rules of decency and decorum to be followed, we're suddenly the bad guys. We're suddenly the ones that are anti-democracy. And somehow, in all of this, from the time that they did it to now, they've become the victims and they're back in the body. The perpetrators of the crime became the victim. Now, if there's one thing that Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton has said that I agree wholeheartedly with, if what they did does not merit expulsion, then what does? Then what does? By the way, I'd like to, after glancing at the super text line, thank my good friend and colleague Pamela for you're awesome. Casada. Got it. Casada. Got it. All right, so walk with me here because I'm going to lay out a few of these things in discussing this. Why do I say we have a developing Cameron Sexton issue? Because Cameron is a very important figure in leadership. He is the Speaker of the House of the state of Tennessee. So you have legitimate questions being asked of the community about how well thought out all of this was, because all you seem to have managed to do is to raise the profile of three nobodies in the Tennessee legislature to the point that they are national liberal heroes. You've raised their profile to the point that one of these knuckleheads, Justin Jones, who has never once up until last week presented one piece of gun control legislation on the floor, not one. You've raised his profile to the point that they smell blood and they're demanding the Speaker resign because they sense weakness. Why wouldn't they? They're back in the body. He expelled them. They got back in. As conquering heroes, they came back in. All right, so on one hand, and there's about 12 hands here. On one hand, you have some legitimate concerns about how well any of this was thought out. On another hand, you have the leftists in this state and in this country smelling blood. And when leftists smell blood, they will not stop until they are stopped. Or they conquer that which they desire to conquer. The political left wants this to end with Cameron Sexton leaving the House of Representatives in disgrace. And when I say that we have a developing Cameron Sexton issue, that's the issue. From a political perspective, where are the Republicans willing to stand up for Cameron Sexton? And if you're not, if you don't agree with his leadership style, if you don't agree with how all of this played out, maybe you have issues with him in the past, maybe you don't believe that he is acting in the best interest of the state of Tennessee, whatever your reasoning, I guess what I'm saying to you is that we have to figure out collectively as a community where we are on this, because you better get busy defending the guy or watch him die, because liberals will destroy him if possible. Remember, political liberals act in the same fashion as radical Islamists. They either convert you to their way of thinking, they subjugate you so you keep your mouth shut, or they destroy you. That's the way they look at you. They do not care about you. They do not care about conservatives. They do not care about Republicans. You are expendable to them. And now, toward what I'm saying, you're seeing the hit pieces come out. Now, if you've not heard, there was a hit piece presented last week against Cameron Sexton. I do not believe this is a mistake. I do not believe this is by coincidence. So you see, Cameron Sexton takes a stand initially. He backs off that stand. He allows these individuals to get back into the body. That's when they smell the blood. And they're not going to stop with the conquering hero crap. They're going to go after the person that tried to destroy them politically by destroying him. How do they do that? They come out with the hit pieces. Hit piece number 1, Cameron Sexton lives in Nashville, not in Crossville. Combination of that plus he takes mileage and he's not supposed to take mileage, which isn't true. He takes a per diem and he's not supposed to take a per diem. That's not true either. He can certainly take a per diem based on his lawful presence in Crossville, Tennessee. Once again, I'm not here defending Cameron on these minor points or what you might consider to be major points. I'm just trying to give you the narrative of what's going on and tell you there's an inflection point for those of us who believe in good policy and good politics in the state of Tennessee. And that is, you either defend this guy or you watch him die. Now, that's up to you to decide. I'm not telling you what conclusions to come to. If you think there's a better person to serve as Speaker of the House, that's up to you to figure out. But here's what I know. Unless others within the political party in the majority in the state of Tennessee come to the guy's defense, they're going to go after him by any means necessary in an attempt to destroy him. There is another hit piece going on against Cameron Sexton. Those of you in the know already know it involves his personal life, and I'm not getting into it. I'm not getting into it until such time that I am convinced, and I've not yet been convinced, that it has affected his public behavior as Speaker. But that's the connective tissue that the Democrats are attempting to put together, whether true or not, in order to destroy the guy. All right, so I say all that to say this. When I say we have a developing Cameron Sexton issue, I'm saying there are Democrats that are attempting to destroy the leadership in the House of Representatives. And we, as collectively, as citizens, need to decide whether we're going to back this guy, stand up and vocally speak in favor of him, or let him go. But understand, if you let this go and you feel like you can get better, tell me who that is. And you better be ready to defend that guy, because I promise you they're coming after him too. They have no ability to affect policy change in this state. All they have are lies. The Tennessean jumped out in front of those lies about gun control with this supposed study or survey that suggests that 80% of Tennesseans want gun control legislation passed. Nonsense. See more of that. I've watched it, and I'm not pulling the I've been around the block a time or two card, but I've been around the block a time or two, and I've watched it over and over and over again. People of good conscience, conservative individuals who want to do right by this country and their state and their city, they get caught up in some of the minutia of the nastiness that the liberal Democrats are willing to throw out against somebody, and they agree, okay, sure, that person must go. And then the Democrats are immediately on to the next one, and on to the next one, and on to the next one. Why do you think Donald Trump infuriates them so much? Why do you think Donald Trump infuriates the political left and their minions in the mainstream media so much? Because they can't destroy him like they're accustomed to destroying conservatives and Republicans. He just won't die. And he won't die because people don't stop supporting him and what he represents. Are you going to allow them to take the pelt of Cameron Sexton? Or are you going to defend him? It's up to you. You're listening to The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you much, McMorey. I just got a message from the boss, Mason.
What's he saying?
I don't know what he's doing up this late. By the way, it's 627 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy in for Brian Wilson this week. He asked me what was going on. He was busy doing management stuff and asked me if anything was breaking out, and I told him all is well. And then he said, "Okay, CYA."
My guess is see ya.
Now, see, my guess was cover your
bottom butt. Can I say that on the air?
You can say bottom or butt on the air.
I'm just making sure.
I can say the other one if I'm, in a mood, but I try not to. I try to keep it PG-13 at least for the listening audience this time of day because so many people are riding home. It's a beautiful day. They're stuck in traffic, yada, yada, yada. But apparently it is, I clarified. I said, cover my bleep? ? And he said, no, see you later. Oh,
see, I was right.
You were right. See ya. Yeah, I get it now. All right, are we saying see ya to Cameron Sexton or not? I mean, the Democrats are up to no good here. Here's the thing. This is complex because there are a lot of Republicans that are smelling blood too, and some of them are in the body. And there's a lot of smoke around Cameron and some of his personal issues. And I don't think any of the questions about the voters in Crossville will determine if it bothers them or not if he's got a primary residence in Nashville, okay? I don't think any of that matters. But unless Republicans and conservatives, and those are two different people, two different groups of people, they overlap certainly, like one of those Venn diagrams that Kamala Harris likes to talk about so much. Unless we come to his defense, I feel as if he's going to be a sacrificial lamb for the Democrats. He's a very vulnerable politician right now. And the Democrats, the national Democrats, got the long knives out, as my buddy Brian Wilson would say, and they're after this guy. We'll find out where you are on it in just a moment. Several of you already weighing in on the super text line, explaining, why it is. I just got this. Every conservative we've sent up there, with the exception of Sapicki, has to manage to otherwise. He has to manage. He made a deal with the governor not to challenge him in the primary, and Lee said he will anoint him next round. I don't know if that's true or not. Some on the super text line are saying it's a fair question to ask about this, and the Democrats don't have any decency about themselves, and they don't give a bleep about us. And so the question is, do you rally around a guy that at very least called them out, at very least attempted to expel them from the body? Or do you say we could do better? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does survive this on his own. But I think he needs support in order to survive the onslaught that he's witnessing right now. And they're coming. And they will shop this nasty story around that I'm not going to make reference to until someone publishes it. Watch. It's already running around the internet, and it will eventually get to a publication where it will more broadly be heard by the general public. I'm not going to engage in that sort of trash. It's 6:30 on Super Talk.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
6:37, almost 6:38. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you until 7 o'clock tonight. Brian Wilson back on Monday. I'll get to calls momentarily. Lots of text coming in on the Super Text line. I've still got to get to Chicago as well. I'm going to line 2 first. I know line 1's been there a while, too, because I want line 2 to spell his name. This is just for you, Mason. What? No, I get it.
You're good. No.
Based on the pronunciation, I don't know that I would.
Her name's Yvonne.
Her name?
Yeah, her name's Yvonne.
Oh, in that case, I would go all right, Evione. That's how I would go.
That's
how it's
definitely one way to spell it.
Yvonne, is your name spelled that way?
Yvonne.
Wait, do it again.
Yvonne.
Oh, Yvonne. Oh, with the Y. Yes, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Would you like to know how Mason spelled it? And I love him to death. I only do this because I love picking on him.
Do it. Go for it. Why not?
Mason spelled it I can't even do this without laughing. Wait on it, Yvonne. He spelled it EEVAUGHN.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I could get that Vaughn part, VAUGHN.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But well, good of you to call, Yvonne. I'm glad you did. What's on your mind?
Okay, first off, I want to say people really need to watch the video of what happened that day on the floor. They need to watch what each individual did. Then secondly, because I sit and personally watched this, I watched the first person get voted out. I watched the girl up there who very much expectedly thought she was getting voted out. And they even said, after she made her racist remark out there in the company of all them people, the only thing that saved her was the last guy's vote. So then she, even after that, she still said it may have to do with the color of our skin. And that's what turned it all into this race, which I hate that. I'm very anti-everybody. Yes, we do see color in different people, but I don't see any difference. I live side by side with them, everything. But they're making this about something that it's not. And Cameron Sexton has done a wonderful job up there. And I don't even understand why he's under the gun. These 3 people are getting bad behavior is getting rewarded right here.
Well, my initial, and I'll explain my frustration, and I consider Cameron to be certainly a friend of the show. I don't think he's a personal friend of mine, but he's a friend of the show, certainly. So my concern was that this would not accomplish anything except to elevate the profile of these individuals because, once again, liberals don't care about the rules. And because liberals don't care about the rules, they violate the rules. They're in clear violation. It is expulsion worthy. There's no question about it. They get sent back to the local municipal, the counties in which they serve to pick a successor. And Shelby County and Metro Nashville just pick the same people because they don't care about the rules. They care about the optics of all of this. They wanted to return them back to the legislature as conquering heroes. Now, there still needs to be an election. They have been temporarily appointed into those roles. They have to be reelected in a special election now. And how that turns out, I expect they'll be back there. I think there's genuine concern about whether or not all of this was thought out. If Cameron were here, and I've had him on the show plenty, I think he would say it doesn't matter. I did the right thing. They did the wrong thing. I can't change what I'm going to do based on how they're going to do.
Right. And if I didn't have to work a full-time job, I'd be down there rallying for him every single day because I would pose the question to those 3 people that were put out. Would you have allowed your children to have done what they did?
That's a great question. I know there's no question that they violated the rules. They admit that they violated the rules. Thank you, Yvonne, for the call. And you're right on target with regard to the kids. I'll go one better. Would the Democrats, if they controlled the body, allow Republicans to do what they did? And, of course, they would not. Now, there's one opinion. Here's another opinion. 8726 says Sexton's a moderate establishmentarian. However, we have to defend him here. The mob rule will be the rule of the day. We'll never be able to keep any speaker who has a backbone. 0785 says Democrats will stick behind each other no matter what, and it seems like Republicans have gotten to where they turn their backs on each other at the drop of a hat. I agree. You know what? I've watched some of this in national politics. When exactly did Ron DeSantis become the swamp? I have my friends who are all in on Trump, and God love you. I'm all in on the guy, too. I love Donald Trump, but Donald Trump can be your pick without turning Ron DeSantis into an enemy. Yet I see us doing that as well. $93.30 says there needs to be some clarity on Sexton's residence. Does he, in fact, live in Nashville? Besides, when he doesn't deserve per fork because I think per diem. Let me offer some clarity on this point too. Per diem is always based on where you're coming from, and per diem is offered to you at a greater rate if you're from further away because the expectation is that you will spend the night in a hotel type situation. Cameron Sexton, I'm not defending him. I'm telling you how he has justified it. He says that he has bought a residence in Nashville because that's more convenient for him considering the amount of time he spends in Nashville. But he maintains that his primary residence is and has always been Crossville. He claims that he goes back every weekend, but he does stay here during the week. There's been suggestion that his kids go to school here. I don't know anything about that. I do know that he's well within his right to have two residences, and there's nothing within the law that says if he does, he doesn't get a per diem. He can use that per diem for an apartment or a hotel or whatever else he wants to. It's his per diem. Cameron also says that he does not do mileage because he's not traveling back and forth to Crossville. Then if he does live in Crossville and gets paid to go home, that's BA. Is that baloney? Bravo Sierra. I don't give a rip. None of them should get paid to drive home on the weekends. Why are we paying public servants to be elites when the peasants are struggling? Well, I don't know off the top of look, I'm not here to defend politicians, 9330, but I would say this. I don't know off the top of my head what these politicians make, but it's not a lot of money. Comparatively speaking. They don't get into this for the money. Now, you might suggest that they get into it for the perks, and maybe you're right. I don't know. The per diem is there for just that, to pay the daily expenses while they're in the General Assembly. So if you would like to see the change, then I'm sure that we can lobby for a change in that regard. But right now, there's no suggestion that Cameron's operating anywhere outside of the rules regarding how he accepts his money. Ernest is next on the issue of Cameron Sexton. Hey, Ernest, glad you called.
Hey. Cameron Sexton's going to get cancel culture. That's just the way it is nowadays. If he's in the right and he knows he's in the right, he needs to stand his ground. The rest of the Republicans, rhinos or conservative or whatever, need to shut up and get behind him. What he done was right as far as I'm concerned. It's just the way it is.
Well, and I think that, you just epitomized why I brought it up, Ernest, and why I think it's an important subject. That I can understand why, we might, as conservatives or libertarians, have slight differences of opinion about how he handled it. The fact of the matter is he did stand up initially, and that's a good thing. And we all applauded that. And he did expel them, or at least he facilitated the expulsion, and we applauded that. What happened afterwards is the responsibility of the Metro Council and the responsibility of Shelby County over there in Memphis. And Cameron really has very little to say about that. Now, he could have refused to seat them. And if he refused to seat them, there would have been a lawsuit challenging that refusal, and they would have been seated anyway. So, I get it, but I also get the other piece that you just said, and that is there are leftists that are going after him and attempting to destroy him because he stood up to some of their own. And I'm wondering if some of his own are going to stand up in his defense like you've done tonight, and I'm glad you did.
All right.
Ernie, hey, man, thank you. I appreciate the telephone call. Let's get into one more. Mike is in, I don't know where Mike is, South Pittsburgh?
Yes, sir. Beautiful downtown South Pittsburgh.
What's on your mind, Mike?
Well, the idea of where he lives, don't you recall as senator of New York, that didn't even live in the state, and her name is Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so what's the difference? What's the big deal?
Look, I don't understand why this is an issue for Nashville. If Crossville can decide that the next election, whether they like or don't like the fact that he's got a second house in Nashville.
Well, Nashville, Crossville, he still lives in a ville.
I mean, yeah.
Come on, man.
I give the guy kudos for choosing to live in Nashville. Is expensive. The funniest thing I've heard in a long time was this knucklehead Justin Jones telling MSNBC that Cameron Sexton lives in a mansion because his house in Nashville costs $600,000. I can assure you, as someone who's looking to buy a house pretty soon in the city of Nashville, $600,000 ain't no mansion.
Sounds to me like Cameron is a typical conservative. He trying not to spend all that money traveling back and forth.
Well, you either are going to spend your look, I haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts of it because it's not my business. His primary residence is Crossville. He has a secondary residence in Nashville, and that's where he stays for most of the session, if not all of the session, outside of weekends. If his citizens don't like that commuting style, they'll figure it out next election cycle. Otherwise, as long as he's not doing anything illegal, the per diem money is his money. He either will pay for a hotel, and I imagine a pretty nice one, or he will pay for a place of residence that he owns or rents. All of this is in the news cycle today because Cameron Sexton stood up to Democrats yesterday and did not finish the drill. That's not necessarily his fault, but everything that happens now, these are Democrats that are smelling blood, and they're coming after the guy. And I just asked the question, consider it. You don't have to answer it. Are you standing up for him, or are you going to leave him behind? Because, as I began the hour saying, this is a developing Cameron Sexton issue, and it's one that the citizens of the state of Tennessee get to decide. It's 6:50, about to wrap up. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for indulging Matt Murphy. Normally, I'm here from noon until 3. I'm here from 3 until 7 o'clock all this week, and I thank you for Brian Wilson allowing me to sit in the chair of the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Stories I will not get to today. The city of Chicago is like an absolute, to call it a mess is the understatement of the year. It is just a travesty, a shell of its former self. We'll perhaps get to that tomorrow. Plus, the city of Dadeville going through a mass shooting of their own that no one in the national news media seems to want to talk about. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Plus, tomorrow on the show, Congressman Mark Green will be with us, amongst others. Taylor Hicks, country music star Taylor Hicks, coming up at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Until then, have a great evening. So long.